Hey guys, it's the Chad, and today I want to talk to you guys about the dash panels out of a 1967 to 72 Chevy or GMC truck. Now I want to be clear, I didn't say dash pad, I said dash panel, like a complete dash panel. Now why in the world would I have this thing removed out of my 1967 C10? Well, you'll have to stick around to find out. Well, I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with my old Seafoam 1967 C10 that I scored a couple months back. Now, when I bought this old girl, the previous owner had already removed the dash. I'm not sure why, but he had. Well, I thought, man, what a great opportunity to go through and talk about why someone would remove or swap one of these dashes out and how to do it. Now, if you guys are familiar with my other 67 to 72 videos, you know that GM made a lot of changes to the parts of this old body style of truck. Now, they usually did this every 2 years, but sometimes they did it every year. Now, if you're going for that year-specific build, you definitely need to ensure that you're buying the right parts for your truck, or if you have some design in mind, you need to make sure you're sticking to that plan. Now, I know there's a lot of websites and part vendors out there that go through and do false advertisement. A lot of times they're going to say that these parts fit a 67 to 72 Chevy or GMC truck. Well, we know that that's a lie. A lot of these parts are specific to a certain year or a certain make. Now, I've had pretty good luck here in the Midwest. I usually shop at LMC Truck or Classic Parts of America because it's close to me. Now, if you guys have your favorite website or parts vendor in your neck of the wood, type down in the old clickety-clack where you're at and what the company name is. That way we can all benefit from it. Now, on these old 67 to 72 trucks, I know there was at least 4 different types of dash panel options that they would have come with. Now, you got to remember, back then, air conditioning was not a very common option. Back in 1967, less than 3% of these old trucks came with air conditioning. So if you have a 67 with air, you've got something fairly rare. Now, if you're not too familiar with the 1967 model, there was a lot of different parts that this truck had that the 68 and ups didn't. Now, I think GM was just throwing a lot of parts together for this first year of body style, just kind of to see what would fit. Now, when we talk about dash panels, 1967 was a year-specific dash. Now, if we take a closer look at the dash out of my 1967 non-AC truck, you can see that the ignition cutout and bezel is much smaller than it would have been on a 1968 to 72. Also, if you go through and look at the cigar lighter cutout, it's completely flush with the dash, whereas the 1968 to 72, it would actually be recessed and have a chrome piece around it. So that means in 1967 you would have had 2 separate dashes, one for an AC truck and one for heater only. Then in 68 to 72 you would have had 2 more, an AC and a heater only. Now I want to be clear, in this video we're only going to be talking about the differences of the dash panels. I'm not going to talk about all the other differences that an AC truck would have versus a heater only. We can tackle that topic in another video. So next I want to go through and talk about why in the world would anybody want to ever go through and replace or swap out one of the dash panels in these old trucks. Now there's a lot of guys out there that own a non-AC truck, or you might find a screaming deal on one down the road and you'd say, oh, you know, I'll just remove that dash and put an AC one in. Now, is that an option? Sure it is, but I don't think it's a very good option because most people don't realize that an AC truck and a heater truck are different. You know, the front firewall openings are different on an AC truck. The kick panels, you have flaps inside of the cowl, and the wiring harness. It goes on from there. Now, I'm not specifically going to talk about all the differences in this video, but you do need to know there's more than just a dash swap. Now, if you want AC and you're not going for that investment show quality build, you could kind of lean over towards that vintage air system or some other type aftermarket, or just roll the windows down. Now, if you have a heater truck but you truly want AC, but you don't feel comfortable removing the dash, you know, that leads me to the next question. Can you go through and modify a heater dash and make it work for a factory air? And the answer is yes. It just depends how much time and what your skill level is. And truly, this still may be a better option than going through and removing the whole dash. Now, when we talk about the dash panels itself, there's really not that big a difference between a heater truck and an AC truck, other than an AC dash has a few more holes cut out. Now, they'll have a vent on the driver's side, a passenger side, and one top dead center. Now, what would be another reason that somebody would want to go through and swap out their dash panels? Now, I think that could be damage. I'm not talking about like a tree falling down on the dash. I'm talking about these trucks are 50 plus years old and people have always been cutting big gaping holes in them for a CB, an 8-track player, CD player, cassette players, and now even Bluetooth. But instead of going through and swapping out the entire dash, you got to remember they make patch panels for about every inch of these old trucks, and now they make them for the dash as well. So now all you got to do is cut out the bad and just weld you in a new patch panel. Now think about what the old timers had to do. You know, if there was big problems with the dash back then, they'd have to run over to a salvage yard, go cut out the section that they needed of a donor truck, then bring it back home and burn a new one back into their truck. Now I still think that that's a pretty good option because you're using original metal, and it's pretty easy to do now that we have all these cordless tools. You just zip it out in a few seconds, bring it home to your nice climate controlled garage, and weld it back in. So one of the last and most necessary reasons why somebody might need to swap out a dash panel is rust. Now depending on where and how long these old pickups have sat out exposed to the elements, there may not be much of a dash panel left, and your only option is to do a swap. Now I kind of wonder though, if the dash panel is in that bad a shape, what's the rest of the truck looking like? Yikes. So let's say you made the decision to go through and remove or swap your dash panel. To get one of these out, they're held into the cab by 6 half-inch bolts, 3 on each side. Now I'd love to tell you that pull 6 bolts and the whole dash comes out, but it won't. If you look at the front or the top of the actual dash panel, you're going to have 24 spot welds that are welded from the dash panel to the bottom windshield lip. Yeah, that sucks. So before you guys can even gain access to these 24 spot welds on this bottom windshield lip, you're going to have to remove the windshield. Are you starting to see why I'm talking about, you know, maybe patch panels or just leaving everything alone? So once you get the windshield out, you're going to need some more tools. You're going to need a hammer, a drill, you're going to need some type of seam splitter, maybe 2. You'll need a spot weld cutter drill bit, and don't forget your safety materials such as glasses, ear protections, and something to cover up your phalanges. So before you go through and start drilling out all these spot welds, make sure you keep a couple bolts in the actual dash to the cab. That way when you break the seam here, it doesn't come falling down and damage anything in your truck. Now once you get all the spot welds drilled out, then we need to come back through and we need to repair any damage that we've done to this front lip. Now straighten it out, go through and grind all this down, and we need to put a coat of weldable primer down. Once that's all clean and ready to go, then take your new dash or your new used dash and do the same thing. Try to make sure that this front lip is extremely straight, grind it down, and put a coat of primer on it as well. So now I've went through and put the new or the new used dash back in, and I've held it in with a couple bolts on each side. Then you want to come back through with some vice grips and get everything, both these lips lined up as best as you can, and then hold them with the vice grips, and then you can go back and start spot welding these back in. Now we need to go back and do all of these all the way across that bottom windshield lip, and then you can go back through and tighten up each of the 3 bolts on both sides of the dash. So once you get all your welding done, then you can come through and remove all of your vice grips or clamps. The next thing you'll need to do is go back through and grind down all your welds, anything that's jagged or not smooth, and then hit it with some primer or paint, whatever you want to finish it off with, and then you're good to go. So now we've gone through and talked about the different types of dash panels that would have came in the old 67 to 72 Chevy or GMC trucks. Now I also talked about how to go through and remove one of these and reinstall a newer used one. Now if you can't tell by now, I'm just not a huge fan of going through and taking a non-AC truck and converting it to a factory AC truck by swapping dashes. I just think there's way too many modifications and alterations to the whole truck that have to happen to make it work out. Now if you truly need air conditioning, I would say go aftermarket like a vintage air setup, or you can be like me and just roll the window down and enjoy Mother Nature. But if your heart's just set on swapping dashes, it can be done. It just takes a little bit of time and skill, which I don't have. Now if you guys know of any other differences to the dash panels on these old trucks, or if you've had success or like major failures going through and modifying, altering, or even doing a complete dash swap, type that down in the old clickety-clack. That way we can all learn. And if you guys haven't, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, you just gotta click. That way I can go through and make more videos like this one. I appreciate your time and thanks for watching.